I woke at 3 in the morning, not because of thunder, because of the sound of iron chains dragging through mud. My hand found the rifle before my eyes opened. 4 years of sleeping alone does that to a man. 4 years of waiting for death to knock on your door. I stepped onto the porch. Rain hammered the wood planks. Lightning split the sky, and in that flash of white, I saw them. 4 massive shapes crawling toward the barn, bigger than horses, taller than any man I'd ever seen. My finger tightened on the trigger. Then I heard it. A voice. Raspy, desperate, barely human. "Water. Please. Water." It was a woman's voice. I stood there in the rain, water streaming down my face, staring at those 4 enormous figures sprawled in the mud like fallen giants. The storm had passed, but its violence lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. My name is Jacob Warren, 36 years old. This land used to stretch 40 acres. 200 head of cattle grazed these fields. Now I had 8 skeletal cows and dirt so cracked it looked like the mouth of hell itself. I stopped praying 4 years ago. Not because I lost faith in God, but because I was afraid He might answer. The lantern swung in my hand as I moved closer. Mud sucked at my boots. The smell hit me first. Blood, sweat, something else. Something that reminded me of burned wood and desperation. The largest of them lay face down, arms stretched forward like she'd been crawling. Her hands were massive, bigger than my head. Iron shackles cut deep into her wrists, the metal stained with old blood and fresh rain. I knelt beside her, turned her over. Her face was bruised, lips cracked and bleeding. But her eyes, God, her eyes opened, and they were dark as midnight, staring up at me with a mixture of fear and something I hadn't seen in years. Hope. She tried to speak. Her mouth moved, but no sound came, just a wheeze of air from lungs that had forgotten how to breathe. I looked at the other 3. The second woman was built like a fortress, muscles visible even through torn clothing. Scars ran the length of her arms. Her jaw was clenched so tight I thought her teeth might shatter. The third one was pale, almost gray. Her back showed fresh whip marks, still bleeding through fabric that had once been a shirt. She wasn't moving. For a moment I thought she was dead. The youngest of them, though still taller than me by half a foot, had her eyes open, staring, terrified. Her lips formed a single word over and over. "Please." I stood there with the rain beating down and the weight of choice crushing my chest. The law was clear. The Fugitive Act. Anyone harboring escaped prisoners faced execution. I'd seen it happen. 3 years back they hanged a farmer in Magdalena for letting a starving Indian woman sleep in his barn. No trial, no mercy, just a rope and a crowd. If I helped these women, I was a dead man. If I walked away, they'd be corpses by morning. I looked down at the youngest one again, at those eyes, and suddenly I wasn't seeing her face anymore. I was seeing David, my son, 5 years old, trapped in flames, reaching for me through smoke and fire, his small voice crying out one last time, "Papa." I couldn't save my boy. The flames took him, took his mother, took everything I loved. But maybe, just maybe, I could save someone else. I lowered the rifle, walked back to the house, grabbed the only bucket of water I had left, and the last piece of bread. Hard as stone, it was supposed to be my dinner. I knelt in the mud, brought the bucket to the first woman's lips, let the water trickle in, slow and careful. She coughed, sputtered, then drank. One by one I gave them water, watched their throats work, watched color return to gray faces, watched 4 pairs of eyes look at me like I was something they'd never seen before. A white man, giving them life instead of taking it. I broke the bread into pieces, placed them in those enormous hands, hands that could crush my skull without effort, hands that trembled as they received what I offered. They ate slowly, like they were afraid the food might vanish if they moved too fast. I sat back against the fence post. The rain had stopped. Dawn was still hours away, and I knew with absolute certainty that I'd just bet my life on 4 strangers who could be my salvation or my doom. The wind carried the smell of wet earth and blood. My mind drifted back to another night, 4 years ago, when the sky burned red and my world collapsed into ash. Anna's screams, David's cries, the smell of burning flesh. I clenched my fists. Maybe I was walking down a road with no return, but at least I wasn't standing alone against the cruelty of this God-forsaken frontier anymore. I dragged them one by one into the old cattle barn. The door hung crooked on rusted hinges. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of rotted hay and animal waste, but it was shelter. Their bodies filled nearly the entire space. I felt small beside them, like a child standing among living monuments of flesh and bone. I pulled a torn blanket over them, sat down hard on the dirt floor, my back against a wooden beam. Questions hammered my skull. Why had 4 giant Apache women collapsed outside my door? Why did fate keep dragging me down roads that led nowhere but pain? The largest one, the first I'd given water to, stirred. Her eyes opened, found mine in the dim light filtering through cracks in the boards. When she spoke, her voice was rough but firm, the voice of someone used to giving orders, not begging. We are not common prisoners. We were taken because we refused. I frowned. Refused what? Her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. To burn a village. Women, children, elders, all of them. A band of soldiers wanted to make an example. We stood in their way, so they called us traitors, put us in chains. The air in the barn grew heavy. My chest tightened. Images of my own home engulfed in flames crashed through my mind. Anna screaming, David crying, the helpless rage of watching the strong crush the innocent beneath their boots. The second woman shifted slightly. Her eyes glowed in the shadows like embers refusing to die. They wanted us dead, to send a message. But we escaped. And we came here. To you. She let out a rough laugh, half bitter, half grateful. I didn't answer. My gaze lingered on the deep scars where the shackles had cut into their wrists, on the cold sweat running down the face of the third woman, tall as a mountain, breathing in ragged gasps. These weren't criminals. These were warriors who had dared to stand against evil. The youngest one spoke, her voice barely a whisper. We knew about you, about what happened 4 years ago, about the boy you helped, about the fire that came after. My blood turned to ice. How? How could they know? The largest woman, her face half hidden in shadow, leaned forward. The boy you fed 5 years ago, he was my brother. He told our tribe about the white man with a kind heart. 2 weeks later, your house burned. We heard the news, and we knew. It wasn't an accident. My hands started shaking. I tried to speak, but no words came. She continued, her voice cutting through the darkness like a blade. The man who burned your home, who killed your wife and child. He wasn't Apache. She paused. Let the silence build. His name is Major Cyrus Holt. He murdered your family because you showed mercy to a starving child. The world tilted. 4 years. 4 years I'd lived with the belief that Apache raiders had destroyed my life, that my act of kindness had painted a target on my family. But the truth was worse, so much worse. An American officer, a man sworn to protect. He had murdered Anna and David to punish me for feeding a hungry boy. I stood up so fast I nearly fell. My vision blurred. The rifle slipped from my hands and clattered on the dirt floor. You're lying. The words came out broken, desperate. The largest woman shook her head slowly. I was there that night. I tried to save them. I ran into the flames, but I was too late. Your son. He called for you, even as the smoke took him. She reached into a torn pocket, pulled out something small, placed it in my hand. A piece of cloth, burned black around the edges. But in the center, still visible, were stitched letters. David Warren. My knees buckled. I fell to the ground, clutching that scrap of fabric like it was the only real thing left in the world. I'm sorry. Her voice was softer now, almost gentle. I couldn't save him, but I kept this, so one day I could return it to you. I don't know how long I sat there. Time lost meaning. The only sound was my own breathing, harsh, uneven, broken. Finally I looked up, met her eyes. "Who are you?" She straightened despite her exhaustion, despite the chains still hanging from her wrists. "My name is Isla. These are my sisters, Vera, Mira, Luna. We are not prisoners. We are warriors. And we came here because we believe you are the only man who might help us stop Holt before he destroys more innocent lives." I stared at the four of them. These giants. These strangers who somehow knew more about my pain than anyone alive. And I realized something that shook me to my core. They hadn't just stumbled onto my land by accident. They had come here on purpose, seeking me out, betting their lives that the man who once fed a starving child might still have a shred of humanity left. I picked up my rifle, checked the ammunition, looked back at Isla. "Tell me everything." The night stretched long and cold. Outside, wind whistled through gaps in the barn walls. Inside, Isla's voice filled the darkness with a story that made my blood run colder than any winter storm. We weren't always prisoners. A month ago, we worked for the army, scouts, trackers. They hired us because we could go places regular soldiers couldn't, because we knew the land, knew the language, knew how to find what was hidden. She paused, took a shaky breath. Then Major Holt gave us an order. Burn Mesa Verde village to the ground. 60 people lived there. Mothers, babies, grandparents who could barely walk. "Why?" I asked. Isla's jaw clenched. A group of Apache warriors attacked a supply wagon 2 days before, killed 3 soldiers. Holt wanted revenge. Didn't matter that Mesa Verde had nothing to do with it. He wanted to make an example, wanted to show that anyone with Apache blood was fair game. Vera, the one built like a fortress, spoke for the first time. Her voice was deep, cold as winter iron. He ordered us to do it, said if we refused, we'd be branded traitors. We told him to go to hell. Mira, the pale one with whip marks on her back, added quietly, "He had us arrested, called us enemy collaborators, threw us in Fort Stanton, said we'd hang within the week." And Luna, the youngest, her voice shaking with barely contained fury, "We escaped 6 days ago, broke our chains, ran through the desert. No food, no water. Half dead. We came here because we heard stories about you, about the white man who helped my uncle 5 years ago. We hoped, we prayed, that maybe you still had a good heart." I looked down at the piece of David's shirt still clutched in my hand, felt the weight of their words settling into my bones. Holt. The name tasted like poison. I stood up, paced the small space. The 4 women watched me with eyes that had seen too much death. "If I help you, I'm a dead man. The army will come. They'll burn this place to ash, just like they did before." Isla nodded slowly. "Yes, they will. But if you don't help us, Holt will keep killing, keep destroying, until there's nothing left but graves." I stopped pacing, turned to face them. "Why should I believe you? How do I know this isn't a trap? How do I know you're not just using me?" Mira spoke then. Her voice was soft but steady. "Because I was there the night your family died. I tried to save your wife. She was still alive when the flames started. She begged me to save your son. I pulled David out. But the smoke, it was too much. He died in my arms." She lifted her hand, showed me a scar across her palm. "This is where his little hand grabbed me, before he stopped breathing. I've carried that scar for 4 years, carried the guilt, because I failed to save him." My vision blurred. Tears I'd held back for years finally broke free. Mira's eyes glistened. "Your son's last words were, 'Tell Papa I love him.' I promised him I would, but I never found you, until now." The barn fell silent except for the sound of my ragged breathing. These 4 women, these strangers, they'd been there. They'd tried to save my family, while I'd spent 4 years hating the wrong people. I wiped my eyes, straightened my shoulders. "What do you need from me?" Isla leaned forward. "Shelter, food, time to heal. And when Holt comes looking, which he will, we need you to stand with us, fight with us." I thought about Anna, about David, about the 4 years I'd wasted drowning in grief and rage. And I thought about the piece of bread I'd given these women, the water I'd shared, the choice I'd already made. I nodded. You have until morning to rest. Then we plan. Relief washed over their faces. Even Vera, hard as stone, seemed to soften slightly. But before any of them could speak, the sound of hoofbeats echoed from outside. Multiple horses, moving fast. Everyone froze. I grabbed my rifle, moved to the door, peered through a crack in the wood. 5 riders. Military uniforms. Approaching the house, my heart hammered. Stay quiet. Don't move. Don't breathe. I stepped out of the barn, closed the door behind me, walked toward the house as the riders pulled up in the yard. The leader dismounted. A man in his late 30s, face covered in scars, eyes cold as a January creek. He looked me over with the expression of someone examining a dead animal. Warren. I'm Sergeant Cole Grimshaw. We're tracking 4 escaped prisoners. Large, dangerous, Apache women. You seen anything unusual around here? I forced myself to stay calm, kept my voice steady. Just the storm, and dead cattle, nothing else. Grimshaw's eyes narrowed. He walked past me, studied the mud, crouched down. These tracks. Not cattle. Too big for any animal I know. He stood up, looked toward the barn. What's in there? Nothing but hay and horse shit. You're welcome to smell it if you want. Grimshaw took a step toward the barn. His hand rested on his pistol. I moved between him and the door, rifle held loose but ready. This is my land, Sergeant. No one goes in my barn without my say-so. The air thickened. The other 4 soldiers shifted in their saddles, hands moving toward weapons. Grimshaw stared at me for a long moment, then smiled. It was the kind of smile that promised violence. You got nerve, Warren. I'll give you that. But hear me clear. If I find out you're hiding them, you'll hang. Just like your wife and kid burned. Rage flooded through me so fast I nearly pulled the trigger. My finger trembled on the metal. Grimshaw saw it. His smile widened. Go ahead. Pull it. Give me a reason. I lowered the rifle, forced my voice to stay level. Get off my land. Grimshaw mounted his horse, but he didn't leave. Not yet. I'll be back, Warren, and next time I'll tear this place apart board by board. He spurred his horse. The 5 riders turned and galloped away into the darkness. I stood there until the sound of hooves faded, until silence returned, until my hands stopped shaking. Then I walked back to the barn, opened the door. 4 pairs of eyes stared at me in the lamplight, waiting. We have a problem. They know you're here, or at least they suspect, and they'll be back. Luna's voice came small and scared. What do we do? I looked at each of them. These 4 giants who had tried to save my family, who had refused to murder innocents, who had bet everything on the hope that I might still be a decent man. We prepare, because when they come back it won't be 5 soldiers, it'll be 50, and they won't come to arrest us. Isla finished my thought. They'll come to kill us. I nodded. So we'd better be ready. But before anyone could respond, the sound of a single horse returned. Slow, cautious. I grabbed the rifle again, stepped outside. A figure on horseback approached. Alone. No uniform this time, just a dark coat and a hat pulled low. The rider stopped 20 feet away. Dismounted. It was Grimshaw. I raised the rifle. I told you to leave. He held up both hands, unarmed. I'm not here to arrest you, Warren. I'm here to tell you the truth. What truth? He took a step closer. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. 4 years ago I was there, the night your house burned. My finger tightened on the trigger. I was ordered to do it. Major Holt gave the command. Said you needed to learn what happens when white men help savages. He told me to burn your house, with your family inside. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Grimshaw's voice cracked. But I refused. I told him no. So he had someone else do it. And he made me watch. Made me stand there while your wife screamed, while your boy cried. Made me listen until the screaming stopped. He fell to his knees. I'm sorry. I couldn't save them. But I can help you now. I can help you stop Holt before he kills again." I stared down at him. This man who had been there, who had heard Anna and David die. Part of me wanted to shoot him, end him right there in the mud. But another part, the part that remembered feeding a starving boy, the part that had given water to 4 dying women, that part whispered, "Vengeance won't bring them back, but maybe justice can stop more deaths." I lowered the rifle. "Get up." Grimshaw stood, looked me in the eye. "Holt is coming here in 3 days, with 50 men. He knows the prisoners escaped, knows they're headed this direction. He's going to burn every farm, every cabin, every structure between here and the border until he finds them." "How do you know?" "Because I heard him say it, and I left my post to warn you." The barn door opened. Isla stepped out, looked at Grimshaw. "I remember you. You were there the day they arrested us. You were the only one who didn't hit us." Grimshaw nodded. "I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of, but I won't stand by anymore, not while Holt keeps killing." Isla studied him for a long moment, then looked at me. "Can we trust him?" I thought about that question, thought about everything I'd lost, everything I still had to lose. Finally, I answered, "I don't know, but right now, we don't have much choice." Grimshaw's jaw tightened. 3 days, that's all we have. After that, hell comes knocking. I looked at the 4 women, at Grimshaw, at the dark horizon where dawn would soon break. Then we'd better not waste them. And as the first light of morning touched the edge of the sky, I realized something I hadn't felt in 4 long years. Purpose. Not revenge, not grief, but purpose. The road ahead was going to be bloody, brutal, maybe impossible. But for the first time since Anna and David died, I had something worth fighting for. Not just survival, but the chance to stop a monster, to protect the innocent, to prove that mercy and justice could still exist in this savage land. I took a deep breath. Let it out slow. All right, let's get to work. 3 days. 72 hours to turn a dying ranch into something that could withstand 50 armed soldiers led by a man who burned families alive for sport. Dawn broke cold and gray. I stood in the yard with Grimshaw, studying the land with new eyes. Eyes that saw not a home, but a battlefield. Grimshaw drew a rough map in the dirt with a stick. His movements were precise. Military. Holt will attack from 3 directions, north, east, and south. He'll leave the west open. Make it look like an escape route. I crouched beside him, following the lines he sketched. A trap. Exactly. Anyone who runs west will be cut down from behind. He's done it before, at Black Mesa, at Rio Seco. Always the same pattern. The barn door opened. Isla emerged first, moving slowly. Her wounds were healing, but every step still brought pain. Vera followed, then Mira, supported by Luna. In daylight, their size became even more striking. Isla stood nearly 7 feet tall. Vera was built like she'd been carved from granite. Even wounded, they radiated a kind of terrible power. But it was their eyes that struck me most. Eyes that had seen too much, suffered too much, yet somehow still held a flicker of hope. Grimshaw looked up at them. For a moment something passed across his face. Shame, maybe, or regret. Isla spoke first, her voice stronger than it had been in the darkness. "Show me the plan." Grimshaw pointed to his dirt map. "We can't hold 3 fronts with 6 people, so we don't try. We funnel them. Force them to come at us from one direction where the ground favors us." "How?" Vera's voice was blunt. "Direct. We make the other approaches impossible. Caltrops on the north side. We have enough scrap metal. Dig pits on the east. Cover them with brush. Make it look like solid ground." "And the south?" I asked. "Fire trenches. We dig channels. Fill them with kerosene and brush. When they come, we light it." "Create a wall of flame!" Mira's face went pale at the mention of fire. I saw her hands tremble. Luna noticed too, put a hand on her sister's shoulder. "We have to." Mira nodded but didn't speak. I stood up, looked at each face around me. "We have 3 days. Let's get started." The work began immediately. Grimshaw and I focused on the north side first. We gathered every piece of scrap metal from the ranch. Broken wagon wheels, bent nails, fragments of old tools. We hammered them into wicked points, scattered them in the tall grass where riders would have to pass. A horse stepping on one would go down. Hard. While we worked, Isla joined us. She moved slower than the others, but her hands were steady, strong. She picked up a piece of twisted metal, studied it. "This won't stop Holt. You know that." I drove another nail into a board, didn't look up. "It'll slow him down. That's all we need." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Why are you doing this? You could run. Leave us. Save yourself." I stopped hammering, met her eyes. 4 years ago I did run, not physically, but I ran from life, from people, from everything that mattered. I'm done running, but we're strangers. You owe us nothing. I thought about David's last words. Tell Papa I love him. Thought about Mira carrying that message for 4 years. You tried to save my family. That's not nothing. Isla's expression softened. We failed. You tried. That's more than most people would have done. We worked in silence after that. The sun climbed higher. Sweat soaked through my shirt despite the cool air. By noon, the north approach was a minefield of hidden death. Any cavalry charge would turn into chaos. Next came the eastern pits. This was harder work. The ground was rocky, unforgiving. But Vera attacked it like she was fighting an enemy. She swung the pickaxe with brutal efficiency. Each strike bit deep into the earth. Her muscles moved like machinery, relentless. I worked beside her, digging out the loosened dirt. After an hour, I had to stop, catch my breath. My hands were bleeding. Vera didn't slow down, didn't even seem to notice the effort. "You're strong," I said. She grunted, kept digging. "Strength isn't enough. My father was the strongest man in our tribe. Holt's soldiers killed him anyway, shot him in the back while he was unarmed. I'm sorry." She finally stopped, looked at me. Her eyes were hard but not cold. Something else burned there, something fierce. Sorry doesn't bring anyone back. But making Holt pay, that might be worth something. She went back to digging. I picked up my shovel and joined her. By late afternoon we had 4 deep pits, each one 6 feet across and 8 feet deep. We covered them with branches and grass. From a distance they looked like solid ground. 1 horse, 1 rider. 1 moment of trust in what looked safe. Then a fall that would break bones and end any charge. The fire trenches took longest. We had to dig channels running the length of the southern approach, then line them with rocks to contain the flames. Mira worked on this part despite her obvious fear. Luna stayed close to her, protective. I watched them work together, saw how Luna anticipated Mira's needs, handed her tools before she asked, steadied her when she stumbled. There was love there, deep and unshakable. Luna caught me looking. Her young face, so full of determination, suddenly seemed uncertain. She walked over, spoke quietly so Mira wouldn't hear. "My sister, she's afraid of fire. When she was young, soldiers burned her village. She was trapped inside a burning building. Our mother died getting her out. That's why she hesitated. When Grimshaw mentioned the fire trenches..." Luna nodded. "But she's doing it anyway, because she knows we have no choice." I looked at Mira, bent over the trench, working with steady hands despite the fear that must be screaming in her mind. "She's braver than she knows." Luna smiled. It was small but genuine. That's what I keep telling her. As the sun began to set on the first day, we gathered in the barn. Exhausted, filthy, but the defenses were taking shape. Grimshaw laid out the next steps. "Tomorrow we focus on weapons. We have your rifle, Warren, my revolver, but we need more. Anything that can kill at distance." I thought for a moment. "There's an old buffalo gun in the cellar, my father's. Haven't fired it in years, but it should work. And I have materials to make simple bombs. Gunpowder, glass bottles, nails." Vera leaned forward. "Show me. I'll make them." The second day began before dawn. I led Vera down to the cellar, showed her the cache of supplies I'd been hoarding without really knowing why. Gunpowder in sealed tins, bottles of various sizes, boxes of nails and scrap metal. Vera's eyes lit up. This is good." She set to work with an intensity that was almost frightening, measuring powder, packing bottles, sealing them with cloth and wax. I watched her hands, so large they could palm my skull, yet moving with delicate precision. "Where did you learn this?" She didn't look up. "My lover. Before Holt killed him. He was a soldier, Union Army. He taught me many things. How to shoot, how to fight, how to make weapons." She paused. Her jaw tightened. "Then Holt ordered him to burn my father's village. He refused. So Holt had him executed for insubordination. Made me watch. I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. Just handed her another bottle. She took it. Our hands touched briefly. Hers were rough, scarred, but steady. After he died, I wanted revenge. Wanted to kill every soldier I could find. But Isla stopped me. Told me that hate would destroy me faster than any bullet. Did you believe her?" Vera looked at me finally. Her eyes were dark, haunted. "No. But I loved her enough to try." While Vera crafted our arsenal, Grimshaw trained me on the buffalo gun. The weapon was massive, heavy as sin. The recoil could break a shoulder if you weren't prepared. He showed me how to brace it, how to breathe, how to lead a moving target. "At 200 yards you aim here." He pointed to a spot above an imaginary rider's head. "The bullet drops. You need to compensate." I fired. The gun roared, kicked like a mule. The target, a fence post 200 yards out, remained standing. Again, I loaded, aimed higher, fired. The post exploded into splinters. Grimshaw nodded. "Better. Now do it 50 more times until your body remembers." My shoulder was bruised purple by sunset, but I could hit a man-sized target at 200 yards 9 times out of 10. Luna spent the day scouting. She moved through the terrain like smoke, silent, nearly invisible, mapping every approach, every hiding spot, every advantage and weakness. When she returned that evening, she brought information. "There's a dried riverbed half a mile west, deep enough to hide in. If we need to retreat, that's our best option." Grimshaw shook his head. "Holt will expect that. He'll have men waiting. Then we need another plan." I studied the map Luna had sketched. "What about the old mine, 2 miles north? The entrance is hidden." Isla looked up. "If we're trapped in a mine, we're dead. Not trapped, hidden. We could leave supplies there. A fallback position if the ranch becomes untenable." Grimshaw considered this. "It's risky, but it might work, if we can reach it." Luna volunteered immediately. "I'll go tonight, stock it with food and water. Mark the route." "It's dangerous," Mira said quietly. Luna smiled at her sister. "Everything we're doing is dangerous. At least this way, if things go wrong, we have options." The third day brought a different kind of preparation. The physical defenses were ready. Now we needed to prepare ourselves. Grimshaw found me on the porch as dawn broke. "We need to talk about what happens when Holt arrives." I poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot, handed him one. "I'm listening." He stared into the dark liquid. "Holt won't negotiate, won't show mercy. He'll burn this place with us inside if he can. And he won't stop until we're all dead, or he is." "I know." Grimshaw looked at me. "Do you? Really?" "Because I've seen him work. I've watched him do things that would make the devil weep. And he enjoys it. The suffering, the fear. It feeds something dark in him." I thought about Anna, about David, about 4 years of grief. Then he's already taken everything from me that matters. All I have left is the chance to stop him from taking it from someone else." Grimshaw was quiet for a long time. Then, "There's something else you should know about that night, when your family died." I set down my cup, waited. "Your wife, Anna. She didn't die in the fire." My blood went cold. "What?" Grimshaw's voice became strained. "Holt pulled her out before the flames got too high. Made her watch your son burn, made her listen to him scream. Then when the screaming stopped, he threw her back into the fire. Alive." The cup slipped from my fingers, shattered on the porch. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to a single point of white-hot rage. Grimshaw continued, each word like a nail driven into my heart. He wanted you to know that, wanted me to tell you someday, so you'd understand that defying him has consequences. I found my voice. It came out as a whisper. How long? What? How long did David scream before he died? Grimshaw closed his eyes. 10 minutes, maybe more. I lost track. I stood up, walked to the edge of the porch, gripped the railing so hard the wood creaked. Behind me, I heard Grimshaw stand. I'm sorry, Warren. I should have died trying to save them, should have put a bullet in Holt right then. But I was a coward, and I've lived with that every day since. I turned around, looked at this scarred, broken man who had finally found the courage to stand. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it? Is being here now enough to make up for being a coward then? I thought about that, about my own years of cowardice, hiding on this ranch, avoiding people, refusing to live. No, it doesn't make up for it. But it's better than staying a coward. That afternoon, Mira asked to speak with me. We walked to the small cemetery behind the house where Anna and David were buried. 2 simple wooden crosses. I'd carved their names myself. Mira stood looking at the graves for a long time before speaking. When I pulled David out of the fire, he was still breathing, barely. His skin was burned, his eyes, but he was alive. She knelt down, touched the earth above his grave with one massive hand. He looked up at me. This tiny boy. And he wasn't afraid. He just smiled and said, "Tell Papa I love him. Tell him it's okay." Tears ran down Mira's face. A 5-year-old child, dying in agony. And he wanted to comfort his father. Wanted you to know it was okay. I knelt beside her, my own tears falling freely now. I never got to say goodbye. Never got to tell him I loved him one last time. Mira reached into her pocket, pulled out something small, placed it in my hand. A button, brass, from David's favorite shirt, the one Anna had made for his 5th birthday. I kept it, all these years. Thought maybe someday I could return it. So you'd have a piece of him. I closed my fist around the button, felt its weight, its reality. Thank you. We knelt there together, 2 people who had lost so much, who carried wounds that would never fully heal. Finally, Mira spoke again. I'm afraid. Of what's coming. Of the fire. Of failing again. I looked at her. This giant of a woman. This healer who had tried to save my son. Fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. What matters is what you do despite the fear. She nodded slowly. Your son. He wasn't afraid at the end. Maybe. Maybe that can give me strength. To be brave like he was. The sun was setting on the 3rd day when it happened. Luna, who had been on watch, came running. They're here. Earlier than expected. I count 40 riders, maybe more. Everyone gathered. Grabbed weapons. Took positions. I climbed to the roof with the buffalo gun. Grimshaw moved to the east side with his revolver. Vera positioned herself at the north barricade, bombs ready. Isla and Luna covered the south. Mira, despite her fear, stood ready with a torch near the fire trenches. We waited, hearts pounding, sweat dripping despite the cool evening air. Then they appeared. A line of cavalry emerging from the trees. Uniforms dark blue against the dying light. Rifles gleaming. At the front, on a black horse, sat a man who could only be Major Cyrus Holt. Tall, rigid, face like carved stone. He raised his hand. The column stopped. His voice carried across the distance. Cold, clear, absolutely certain. Jacob Warren, you are harboring fugitives, enemies of the United States. Surrender them now and you will be shown mercy. Refuse and you will burn like your family burned. I stood up on the roof, made myself visible, raised my voice. There are no fugitives here, only people who refuse to murder innocents. If that makes them criminals, then your law is broken. Holt's laugh was sharp, cutting. You dare speak to me of law? You who give shelter to savages? Who betray your own kind? My own kind murdered my wife and child. Don't talk to me about betrayal. Holt's expression hardened. They died because you were weak, because you showed mercy to vermin. I tried to teach you a lesson. Clearly you didn't learn." He raised his hand again. "Burn it. Burn it all. Leave nothing standing. And bring me Warren's corpse." 40 riders charged forward. Hooves thundered. Men shouted. Rifles fired. The battle for my soul, for all our souls, had begun. The first wave hit the north side. 20 riders pushing hard through the tall grass where Vera's caltrops waited in ambush. I heard the screams of horses before I saw anything. Animals shrieking in pain as metal tore into hooves. Riders thrown as mounts collapsed. Chaos erupted in seconds. Men hitting the ground hard, some breaking bones, others crushed beneath falling horses. Vera rose from behind the barricade. She held 2 of her homemade bombs, lit the fuses with a torch, threw them in perfect arcs. The explosions were smaller than I expected, but devastating. Glass and nails shredding anything within 20 feet, men screaming, blood spraying. From my position on the roof, I aimed the buffalo gun at a rider trying to rally the survivors. Drew breath, squeezed the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked me off the roof, but the bullet flew true. The rider went down. I reloaded, aimed, fired, again and again, each shot dropping a man or a horse, each death necessary, terrible, unavoidable. Below, Vera charged into the broken formation. She moved like a force of nature, grabbed a man by his uniform, lifted him off his feet, threw him into 2 others. All 3 went down in a tangle. Another soldier raised a rifle at her back. I saw it happen in slow motion, tried to swing my gun around. Too slow. The shot rang out. Vera staggered, but she didn't fall. Turned, blood spreading across her shoulder, face twisted in rage. She crossed the distance to the shooter in 3 massive strides, ripped the rifle from his hands, snapped it over her knee like kindling, then knocked him unconscious with a single punch. More riders were circling to the east, where Grimshaw waited. They rode hard, confident, not seeing the hidden pits. The first horse went through the false ground with a sickening crash, rider screaming as both fell 8 feet onto rocks. The horse behind couldn't stop, went over the edge, then another. 4 riders down in seconds, the rest pulling up hard, confused, frightened. Grimshaw emerged from cover, started firing methodically, each shot placed with precision, dropping men as they tried to retreat. But more were coming from the south, the main force, 20 riders at least. Isla and Luna stood ready, Mira beside them, torch shaking in her hand. The riders charged, hooves pounding the earth. Isla raised her hand, waited. Now. Mira threw the torch. It arced through the air, landed in the trench. Fire erupted, a wall of flame 20 feet high, kerosene and dry brush creating an inferno that stopped the charge dead. Horses reared, threw riders, bolted in panic, but some made it through, burst from the flames, clothes smoking, eyes wild. Isla met them head on. She had no weapon but her body, and it was enough. She caught the first rider as he swung a saber at her head, grabbed his wrist, twisted. The bones snapped. The man screamed. She pulled him off his horse, threw him into the fire. Luna was faster, smaller. She ducked under a horse, came up behind the rider, pulled him backward off the saddle. He hit the ground. She was on him instantly, fists hammering until he stopped moving, but there were too many. For every man we dropped, 2 more appeared. I saw Holt then, still mounted, still watching. He hadn't joined the attack, was studying us, learning our positions, our tactics. He raised his arm, pointed directly at me. 6 riders broke from the main group, raced toward the house, toward my position. I fired, dropped the lead rider, reloaded, fired again, missed. The remaining 5 reached the house, dismounted, started climbing. I abandoned the buffalo gun, too slow for close quarters, drew my revolver, moved to the edge of the roof. The first soldier's head appeared. I shot him. He fell backward, took out the man behind him, but 3 more came from different sides. I couldn't cover all directions. One made it onto the roof, charged at me, knife drawn. I fired. Click. Empty. He was on me, knife slashing. I threw myself backward, hit hard, lost the revolver. He loomed over me, raised the knife. A massive hand grabbed his head from behind, lifted him straight up. It was Isla. She'd climbed the outside wall, impossible as it seemed. She held the soldier off the roof with one hand. He kicked, struggled, futile. "Are you hurt?" she asked me, calm as if discussing the weather. "I'm fine." She nodded, then opened her hand. The soldier fell, screamed all the way down. "We need to move. They're flanking." She was right. While we'd focused on the direct attacks, Holt had sent men around. They were in the barn now, setting fires. Smoke began rising, orange light flickering through the cracks in the walls. Below, Grimshaw was pinned down, 3 soldiers advancing on his position. He fired his last round, started to reload. One of the soldiers shot him in the leg. Grimshaw collapsed behind a water trough, blood spreading across his pants. He gritted his teeth, braced his rifle on the trough's edge, kept firing from cover, each shot placed with desperate precision despite the pain screaming through his leg. But the soldiers kept coming. Number. I jumped off the roof, landed hard, rolled, came up running. The soldier who shot Grimshaw was raising his rifle to finish the job. I tackled him. We hit the ground together, fought for the gun. He was younger than me, stronger, started to overpower me. Then Grimshaw, bleeding and pale, crawled over, grabbed the man's head, twisted hard. The crack was audible even over the battle's roar. The soldier went limp. I helped Grimshaw up. He could barely stand. "Can you walk?" He nodded through gritted teeth. "Good enough." We limped toward cover as bullets kicked up dirt around us. Vera appeared, shoulder still bleeding, face streaked with soot and blood. Some hers, most not. "The barn's lost. We need to fall back." "Where?" She looked west, toward the escape route Holt had left open. "The trap. We don't have a choice. Then we spring his trap, and make him regret it." Vera's blood-soaked grin was terrifying. "I like the way you think." She whistled. A signal. Isla and Luna heard it, started retreating. Mira followed, torch still in hand even though the fire terrified her. We ran west, Grimshaw supported between Vera and me. Behind us, the ranch burned. Everything I'd built, everything I'd tried to rebuild after losing Anna and David, all of it turning to ash. Again. We reached the edge of the property, where the grassland gave way to rocky terrain. And there they were, just as Grimshaw had predicted, 10 more soldiers, hidden, waiting. They emerged from behind rocks, rifles raised. We were surrounded, exhausted, low on ammunition, Grimshaw wounded, Vera wounded, all of us at the end of our strength. The soldiers closed in. Holt rode up behind them, finally entering the battle now that victory seemed certain. He dismounted slowly, walked forward, every step calculated. "Cruel, Jacob Warren. You've caused me considerable trouble, killed many of my men, destroyed government property." He stopped 10 feet away. "For that, you will suffer before you die. As will your savage friends." He looked at the 4 sisters. His lip curled in disgust. "Monsters. Abominations. You should have been drowned at birth." Isla stepped forward, drew herself to full height, towering over everyone. Even wounded and exhausted, she was magnificent. "We are not monsters. We are women who refuse to become murderers, who chose conscience over orders. That makes us more human than you will ever be." Holt's face reddened. He raised his pistol, aimed it at Isla's head. "Any last words, savage?" Isla looked at me, at her sisters, then back at Holt. "Yes. One thing." "What?" "You've already lost. You just don't know it yet." Holt's finger tightened on the trigger. Then the ground exploded. Luna had circled back during the retreat, had planted Vera's remaining bombs along the soldiers' position, had waited for this moment. The blast threw men in every direction, killed some instantly, wounded others, created chaos. Holt stumbled backward, dropped his pistol. I was on him before he could recover. Tackled him to the ground, years of rage and grief pouring into every punch. He fought back, strong, trained. But I had something he didn't. Purpose, real purpose. Not the twisted certainty of a fanatic, but the righteous fury of a father whose child was tortured to death by this monster. I beat him until my knuckles split, until his face was pulp, until Vera pulled me off. Enough. We need him alive. Why? I snarled. So he can hang? So he can stand trial? He deserves to die here. Now. In the dirt like an animal. Vera's grip on my shoulder was iron. Yes, he does. But if we kill him, we become what he says we are. Savages. Murderers. We prove him right. I looked down at Holt, broken, bleeding, finally afraid. Then Grimshaw spoke, barely conscious, voice weak but clear. Let the law have him. Let everyone see what he is, what he's done. Make sure the world knows. I wanted to argue, wanted to finish it, end him the way he ended my family. But I looked at Isla, at Vera, at Mira and Luna, at these four giants who had refused to murder innocents even when ordered, who had chosen a harder path because it was right. And I realized they were stronger than me, braver than me, better than me. I stepped back. Let Holt live. Soldiers were surrendering now. The fight gone out of them, their leader beaten, their certainty shattered. The ranch behind us was ashes. The barn collapsed. The house a skeleton of charred beams. Everything I owned, gone. But as I looked at the people standing with me, at Grimshaw, who had finally found his courage, at the four sisters who had risked everything for what was right, at the dozen soldiers now throwing down their weapons, refusing to fight anymore, I realized I hadn't lost everything. I'd found something I thought died with Anna and David. Family, not of blood, but of choice, of shared struggle, of people who saw the worst in each other and stood together anyway. The sun was rising, painting the smoke-filled sky in shades of orange and red. A new day, the first day of whatever came next, and for the first time in 4 years, I was ready to face it. 1 week after the battle, I stood in the shadow of Fort Stanton's walls and wondered if justice was real or just another story we told ourselves to sleep at night. The journey here had been agony. Grimshaw's leg wound festered despite Mira's care. We had to stop every few hours to clean it, rebandage it, listen to him insist through gritted teeth that he was fine. He wasn't fine. None of us were. Vera's shoulder had taken a bullet that went clean through but left the muscle damaged. She couldn't raise her right arm above her head anymore, couldn't swing a weapon with the same devastating force. I watched her try when she thought no one was looking, watched her face contort with pain and frustration. Mira barely spoke. The fire at the ranch had awakened something dark in her. Nightmares plagued her sleep. Luna stayed close, holding her sister's hand through the terrors that came when darkness fell. Isla carried the weight of leadership like always. But I saw cracks forming, small moments when she thought no one watched. Her hands would shake, her breath would catch, the facade of strength slipping to reveal the exhausted, traumatized woman beneath. And me? I carried David's button in my pocket, touched it 100 times a day, a talisman, a reminder, a wound that wouldn't heal. Holt had been transported separately, under heavy guard. The commanding officer at Fort Stanton, Colonel Samuel Brennan, had taken one look at Holt's beaten face and the report of what happened and ordered him locked in the stockade. Now came the trial. Military justice. Swift, brutal, final. The courtroom was a converted barracks, rough wooden benches, a table for the prosecution, another for the defense. 3 officers sitting in judgment. Colonel Brennan presided, flanked by Major Thomas Ridley and Captain James Morrison. All 3 wore expressions of stone as Holt was led in, shackled, bruised, but still defiant. He looked at me as he passed. His eyes held no remorse, no fear, only contempt. I stared back, refused to look away. Let him see that I wasn't broken, that he hadn't won. The charges were read, a litany of horrors that took nearly 10 minutes to recite. Murder of civilians, destruction of property without authorization, torture of prisoners, dereliction of duty, conspiracy to commit genocide. That last one made Holt laugh. Sharp, bitter. Genocide? I was cleaning up savages, doing what this country needs but is too weak to stomach. Brennan's voice cracked like a whip. You will be silent, or you will be gagged. Holt smirked, but said nothing more. The prosecution called witnesses, soldiers who had served under Holt, who had watched him order villages burned, who had seen him execute prisoners without trial, who had participated because they were terrified of him. One young private, couldn't have been more than 19, broke down crying on the stand. He made us kill children, said if we refused we'd be shot for cowardice. I watched him put a gun to a little girl's head. She was maybe 6 years old. He pulled the trigger while she was begging for her mother. The private's voice dissolved into sobs. I dream about her every night, every single night. I can't make it stop. Brennan's face remained impassive, but I saw his knuckles white where he gripped his gavel. When my turn came to testify, I told them everything. About helping the Apache boy 5 years ago, about coming home to find Anna and David dead, about 4 years of believing it was Apache raiders who killed them. I told them about Grimshaw's confession, about learning the truth, about Holt's cruelty in making Anna watch David burn before throwing her back into the flames. My voice stayed steady until that part. Then it broke, shattered like glass. My wife listened to our 5-year-old son scream for 10 minutes before he died. And Holt made her watch, made her hear every second. That was the last thing she experienced before burning alive. Silence filled the courtroom, heavy, suffocating. Then Brennan spoke. Mr. Warren, do you have any physical evidence to support these claims? I reached into my pocket, pulled out David's button, placed it on the table. This belonged to my son. It's all I have left of him. All Holt left me. Brennan picked up the button, studied it, set it down carefully. The court acknowledges this evidence. Isla testified next. Describe the order to burn Mesa Verde. The refusal. The arrest and imprisonment. The escape. Vera corroborated. Added details about the torture they endured at Fort Stanton before breaking free. Mira's testimony was brief, quiet, but devastating in its simplicity. He wanted us to murder 60 innocent people to make a political point. We said no. He called that treason. We call it being human. Luna spoke last of the sisters. She looked small in the witness chair despite her height. Young, vulnerable. I was abandoned as a child because I grew too fast, because I looked different. People called me a monster, a freak. But Isla found me, gave me a family, taught me I had worth. She looked directly at Holt. You think we're savages because of our blood, because of how we look, but the only savage in this room is you. The defense had little to say. Holt's attorney, a captain named Daniels, tried to argue military necessity, difficult choices in wartime, the need for harsh measures against insurgents. Brennan cut him off. There is no war. These were American citizens, children. The accused murdered them for sport. But sir, Daniels protested. Sit down, Captain. You shame your uniform with this defense. Daniels sat, looked relieved to be done. Then Holt demanded to speak, against his attorney's advice, against all sense and reason. He stood, chains rattling, face still swollen from my fists, and he smiled. You want to know why I did it? Why I burned Warren's family? Why I ordered villages destroyed? His voice rose, gaining strength, conviction. Because this country was built on strength, on the willingness to do what's necessary. The weak have no place here. They drag us down, make us soft, vulnerable. He looked at the 4 sisters. Those creatures are abominations, mixing bloods that should never mix, creating monsters that don't belong in either world. They should be eliminated, bred out, destroyed. Isla's hand found mine under the table, squeezed. I squeezed back, anchoring each other. Holt turned to me. Your son was weak, cried for his mother like a baby, screamed and begged, showed no courage, no strength. He deserved to burn. I lunged, would have killed him right there, torn him apart with my bare hands. But Grimshaw caught me, held me back despite his wounded leg, whispered urgently, Don't give him what he wants. Don't prove him right. I froze, shaking with rage, tears streaming down my face. Holt laughed. See? Weak. All of you. Too weak to survive in the world I'm building. Brennan's gavel came down like a gunshot. Enough. Major Cyrus Holt, you are found guilty on all charges. The sentence is death by hanging, to be carried out at dawn 3 days hence. May God have mercy on your soul. Holt's smile never wavered. I don't need mercy. I need nothing from any of you. History will remember me as a visionary, and you as cowards who let monsters walk among you. He was dragged from the courtroom still laughing, still certain of his righteousness, still completely, utterly mad. The room emptied slowly, people filing out in silence. What was there to say? Justice had been served. A monster would die. But it felt hollow, empty. All the verdicts in the world wouldn't bring back Anna and David, wouldn't undo the trauma etched into 4 Apache sisters, wouldn't heal the scars we all carried. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, the same colors that had filled the sky when my ranch burned. Isla found me standing alone near the fort's wall. Are you all right? I don't know. I thought this would feel different, like closure, like an ending. She nodded. Justice doesn't heal wounds, it just acknowledges them, makes sure the world knows they happened. I looked at her. This massive woman who carried so much pain with such quiet dignity. Do you regret it? Coming to me? If you hadn't, none of this would have happened to you. Isla was quiet for a long moment. Then, if we hadn't come to you, Holt would still be out there, still burning villages, still murdering children. We stopped him. That matters. But you lost so much. She smiled sadly. We all did. But we also found something. Found each other. Found people willing to stand for what's right even when it costs everything. Her hand found my shoulder. That's not nothing, Jacob. That's rare, precious, worth protecting. The night before the execution, Holt requested to see me. I almost refused. Had no desire to face that monster again. But Grimshaw convinced me. He wants one last chance to hurt you, to plant poison in your mind. But he can only do that if you let him. Go. Hear whatever venom he spits. Then walk away knowing you survived him. So I went. The stockade was dark, damp, smelled of rot and despair. Holt sat in his cell, still chained, face mostly healed now but marked forever by our fight. He looked up when I entered, that same terrible smile. Warren. Come to gloat? I said nothing, just stood there, waiting. Holt leaned forward as far as his chains allowed. Your wife, Anna, I want you to know. She fought, tried to run back into the fire to save your boy. We had to hold her, make her watch, and when he finally stopped screaming, when his little lungs finally gave out, she just broke, stopped fighting, stopped struggling, just stared at nothing. He paused, savoring the memory. That's when I threw her in, when she was already dead inside. The flames were just finishing what grief had started. I felt my hands curl into fists, felt rage boiling in my chest. But I also felt something else, something Holt couldn't touch. The weight of David's button in my pocket, the memory of Isla's hand in mine, the knowledge that 4 remarkable women had chosen to trust me, that Grimshaw had found redemption, that soldiers had thrown down their weapons rather than fight for evil. Holt hadn't won, hadn't broken me, hadn't destroyed everything good in the world. He'd tried. God knows he'd tried, but he'd failed. I looked at him, this pathetic, twisted man, this creature of hate and bile. And I spoke, voice steady, clear. You wanted me to suffer, to break, to become like you, consumed by hate, destroyed by grief. I stepped closer to the bars, but I'm still here, still standing, still capable of caring about people, of building instead of destroying, of choosing mercy over vengeance. His smile faltered. You took my family, burned my home, killed people I loved, but you couldn't kill the part of me that's still human, still capable of hope, still willing to fight for what's right. I turned to leave. Holt's voice followed me, desperate now, losing its certainty. You're weak, a coward. History will forget you. I stopped at the door, looked back one last time. Maybe, but my son's last words were, "I love you." He died surrounded by love, even in the flames. What will your last words be? Who will mourn you? Who will remember you as anything but a monster? His face contorted, all pretense of calm shattering. I am a visionary, a patriot. I saved this country from mongrel filth. No. You're just a small, broken man who thought cruelty made you strong. Tomorrow you'll hang, and the day after, the world will be better for your absence. I walked out, left him screaming behind me, ranting about destiny and strength and the weakness of mercy. But his words were just noise now, empty, powerless. Dawn came cold and gray. A crowd gathered in the fort's courtyard. Soldiers, civilians, Apache from nearby tribes who had heard about the trial. All come to witness justice. The gallows stood in the center, simple, functional. A wooden platform, a rope, a trapdoor. Holt was led out, no longer smiling, no longer certain, face pale, hands shaking despite his chains. He looked into the crowd, searching for something. Sympathy, maybe. Understanding. Support. He found none. The presiding chaplain offered last rites. Holt spat at him. Colonel Brennan read the charges one final time. The sentence. Asked if Holt had any final words. Holt opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time in his miserable life, he had nothing to say. The noose went around his neck. The chaplain stepped back. Brennan raised his hand, and I turned away. Refused to watch. Refused to let the last thing I saw of Holt be his death. Refused to give him that piece of my soul. Beside me, Isla did the same. Then Vera, Mira, Luna, Grimshaw, all of us turning our backs, choosing not to feed on vengeance, choosing something harder, something better. The trapdoor opened. A thud, a crack, then silence. Cyrus Holt was dead. But we were still alive. 1 month after the execution, I stood in the ruins of my ranch and tried to remember what it looked like before the fire. The house was gone. Just a foundation and some charred beams. The barn was rubble. The fences burned. The land scorched black in places. It looked like the end of something, like death. But I was learning that endings and beginnings often look the same. The Army had paid restitution. Not much, never enough. But combined with the reward money for capturing Holt, I had funds to rebuild. The question was whether I wanted to. I could take the money, leave, start over somewhere else, somewhere without ghosts and memories and pain. But as I stood there in the ashes, I realized something. Running hadn't worked 4 years ago. It wouldn't work now. This land held Anna and David, held the best parts of my life and the worst. Leaving wouldn't erase that, wouldn't heal anything. So I stayed. The sound of footsteps made me turn. Isla approached. She'd been helping in town, using her size and strength to do work that paid well. Saving money. For what, I wasn't sure. She never said. She stood beside me, looking at the wreckage. "What will you do?" I picked up a piece of charred wood, turned it over in my hands. Rebuild. Not the same. Can't bring back what's gone. But something new. Something that honors what was while accepting what is. Isla nodded. That's wise. What about you? All of you? Where will you go? She was quiet for a long moment. We've been talking about that. About what comes next. The Army offered us positions. Scouts again. Good pay. Safe. Respected now after the trial. That sounds good. It does. But, she trailed off, looked at the horizon. But, we spent so long fighting, surviving, running. The idea of just living, of having a place that's ours, that feels impossible, like something that happens to other people. I understood that. God knows I understood that. What if it wasn't impossible? She looked at me, curious. I gestured at the land around us. I have more property than I can work alone. 200 acres once you count the back pastures. Good grazing. Water access. Room to build. Isla's eyes widened slightly. You're offering a partnership. You and your sisters help me rebuild. Work the land. We split everything equal. Build a place that's ours together. Why would you do that? I met her gaze. Because a month ago, 4 strangers gave me a reason to keep living. Because you stood with me when you had every reason to run. Because I'm tired of being alone. And because David's last words were about love. About connection. He understood something at 5 years old that took me 4 years to remember. What? That we're not meant to survive alone. That family isn't just blood. That home is the people you choose to stand with. Isla's eyes glistened. We're difficult. All of us. Carrying trauma. Broken in different ways. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. She extended her massive hand. Partners, then. I shook it. Partners. The others arrived later that day. Vera and Luna had been hunting. Brought back 2 deer. Mira had gathered medicinal herbs from the foothills. When Isla told them about my offer, their reactions varied. Vera was suspicious at first. What's the catch? Nobody offers something for nothing. No catch. Just hard work and honest dealing. She studied me, then nodded. I can work with that. Luna grinned. Does this mean I finally get my own room? Because sharing with 3 people who snore is killing me. I snore? Mira asked indignantly. Like a bear, Luna said. A very large, very loud bear. Even Vera cracked a smile at that. Mira looked at me seriously. Are you certain? We come with complications. There are people who hate us, fear us. You'll be judged for associating with us. I've been judged my whole life for being too soft, too weak, too merciful. I'm done caring what small-minded people think. She nodded slowly. Then we accept, and we'll help make this the finest ranch in New Mexico. The work began the next day. We started with the basics. A shelter first. Nothing fancy, just a large cabin with enough room for everyone. Vera and Isla handled the heavy timber, lifting logs that would take 4 normal men to move. Their strength was astonishing, humbling. Luna and I worked on the roof. She had nimble fingers despite her size, could weave thatch and place shingles with surprising delicacy. Mira managed supplies, organized materials, treated injuries when someone got careless with a saw or hammer. And Grimshaw. He showed up one morning unannounced, legs still weak but healing. Said he'd resigned from the army, said he wanted to help if we'd have him. We'd have him. He brought skills none of us possessed. Carpentry, masonry, the technical knowledge of someone who'd spent years building forts and fortifications. Under his direction, the cabin took shape quickly. Within 2 weeks, we had walls, a roof, a floor, separate rooms for privacy. It wasn't much, but it was ours. The town's reaction was mixed. Some people supported us, brought supplies, offered help, said what we'd done, standing against Holt, showed real courage. But others whispered, called me a traitor, said I was living with savages, predicted we'd all be murdered in our sleep. I ignored them, mostly. But one day the mayor came calling. Silas Hawthorne, 50 years old, thick mustache, eyes like a weasel. He found me working on the new barn, didn't dismount, just sat his horse and talked down at me. Warren, we need to have a conversation. I kept hammering nails. I'm listening. The town council has concerns about your associates. You mean my friends and business partners? His mouth tightened. 4 Apache women living on your property. People are worried, nervous. There have been incidents in other territories. What kind of incidents? Violence, theft. You understand. I set down my hammer, looked up at him. Mayor Hawthorne, those 4 women risked their lives to stop a murderer, stood against 50 soldiers, fought for what was right even when it meant losing everything. I stepped closer to his horse. Meanwhile, this town did nothing. Stood by while Holt burned families alive, while he tortured prisoners, while he committed atrocities in your name. His face reddened. Now you're worried? Now you're concerned about violence? Where was that concern when my wife and son burned, when Mesa Verde was destroyed, when children were murdered? Warren, get off my land and don't come back unless you're here to apologize. Hawthorne's jaw worked, but he turned his horse and rode away. Behind me, Isla spoke quietly. You'll make enemies doing that. I already have enemies. Might as well make them for the right reasons. She smiled. Anna would have liked you. I turned, confused. Your wife, the woman I tried to save, in those last moments before. She talked about you, said you were the best man she'd ever known, said David was lucky to have you as a father. My throat tightened. I failed them. Isla shook her head. You loved them. That's never failure, and they knew it. That mattered more than anything. As summer turned to autumn, the ranch took shape. We built a proper barn, repaired fences, bought cattle with our pooled resources. Grimshaw proved invaluable. His military pension provided steady income, and his carpentry skills kept improving our infrastructure. He and Vera developed an unlikely friendship. Both warriors, both carrying guilt. They understood each other in ways the rest of us couldn't. I'd see them sometimes in the evening, sitting on the porch, talking quietly, two broken people finding comfort in shared experience. Mira started a garden, medicinal herbs mostly, but also vegetables, flowers, things of beauty and utility. She'd spend hours there, hands in the soil, face peaceful in a way it never was otherwise. Luna told me once that the garden saved Mira, gave her something to nurture, to grow, to care for without fear. Luna herself became our scout and hunter. She'd disappear for days, come back with game, with information about the territory, with stories of the world beyond our borders. She was restless, always moving, never quite settling. But she always came back. One evening, 6 months after we'd started rebuilding, I found myself alone with Isla. The others had gone to town for supplies. We sat on the porch, watching the sun set. Do you miss it? I asked. Your old life. Before Holt. Before all of this. She considered the question. Sometimes. Life was simpler then. We had a purpose, a place. We knew who we were. And now? Now it's complicated. We're building something new, something that doesn't have a name or a template. It's frightening, but also exciting. She looked at me. What about you? Do you still see Anna and David when you look at this place? Every day. But it's different now. Before, the memories were just pain. Now they're bittersweet, sad but also beautiful. Proof that I loved and was loved. That's healing, she said softly. Maybe. Or maybe it's just learning to carry the weight better. Perhaps those are the same thing. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Two people who had lost everything, who had found each other in the wreckage, who were building something neither could name but both needed. The sound of wagons returning broke the moment, the others arriving with supplies and news. Grimshaw was excited, animated in a way I'd never seen. There's a family, German immigrants, just arrived in town. They're looking for work, for land. And I talked to them, told them about this place, about what we're building. They're interested, want to meet you. Why would I want to meet them? Because they have 3 sons, strong backs, good workers, and because building a community requires more than just us. He was right. We couldn't stay isolated forever, couldn't pretend the world didn't exist. 3 days later, the Muller family arrived, Hans and Greta, their sons Friedrich, Otto, and young Karl. They looked nervous, uncertain, these massive Apache women, a scarred veteran, a rancher with a haunted past. But Greta's eyes were kind, and Hans had the handshake of an honest man. We talked. I explained our arrangement, our partnership, our goals. Hans listened carefully. In Germany, my family lost everything. Revolution. War. We came here for a new start. For hope. He looked at his sons. We want to work, to build, to have a place in this world. If you will have us, we will be loyal, honest, fair. I looked at Isla, at the others, saw agreement in their faces. We'll have you. Welcome. And so our community grew. The Mullers built their home on the eastern pasture, worked alongside us, shared meals, shared stories, became part of something larger than any individual. Other families followed, slowly, cautiously. But they came. A freed slave named Moses Washington, his wife Sarah, their daughter Ruth, a Mexican couple, Diego and Carmen Reyes, fleeing violence in their homeland, a widow named Catherine O'Brien, her 2 children, looking for safety and purpose, each one different, each one carrying their own pain and hope, but all of them choosing to be here, to build together, to create something new. The town's attitude began shifting, slowly, what we were doing, this mixing of peoples and cultures. It challenged their assumptions. Some still hated us, still predicted disaster, but others started to wonder, started to question their own prejudices. Mayor Hawthorne never apologized, but he stopped actively opposing us. That was something. 1 year after the battle, we held a ceremony, simple, quiet. We gathered at Anna and David's graves, the community we'd built. 14 families now, more than 60 people. I spoke first. 4 years ago, I lost my family, lost my hope, lost my faith in humanity. I thought that was the end of my story. I looked at Isla, at her sisters, at Grimshaw, at all these people who had chosen to stand together. But it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, a chance to build something better, something that honors the dead by protecting the living. I placed a flower on each grave, David's favorite, a prairie rose. Anna believed in kindness, in mercy, in seeing the humanity in everyone. David believed in love, in family, in the goodness of people. I knelt, touched the earth above their graves. I failed to protect you, but I won't fail to honor you. This community, this place, it's built on what you taught me. That strength comes from compassion. That family is chosen. That hope can survive even the darkest fires. Isla stepped forward, placed her massive hand on my shoulder. Then she spoke, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. We are all survivors here. All of us have lost. All of us have suffered. But we chose something harder than revenge, harder than hate. We chose to build, to trust, to believe that broken people can create something whole. She looked at each person. This land is sacred now, not because of blood spilled, but because of lives rebuilt, because people who had every reason to give up chose hope instead. The crowd was silent, listening. Mira spoke next, her voice soft but steady. I was taught that my curse was being different, being too large, too strong, too Apache. But here I learned that difference is not weakness, that we are strongest when we embrace what makes us unique, when we stand together in our diversity, Vera added, her voice gruff but sincere. I came here broken, full of rage, ready to die fighting. But this community taught me that there are things worth living for, worth building for, worth protecting. Luna, the youngest, spoke last. I was abandoned for being a monster, but you all showed me I'm not a monster. I'm just Luna, and that's enough. One by one each family came forward, laid flowers on the graves, spoke words of remembrance and hope. The Mullers, the Washingtons, the Reyes family, the O'Briens, each one adding their voice, their promise. When everyone had spoken, Grimshaw stepped forward. He'd been quiet throughout, but now he pulled out a wooden box. Jacob, the community wanted to give you something. He opened it. Inside was a brass plaque, engraved with words. The Warren Community, founded 1879, in memory of Anna and David Warren. May we honor the dead by protecting the living. My vision blurred, tears falling freely. Grimshaw's voice was thick with emotion. You gave us all a second chance, a place to heal, to grow, to become better than we were. This is our promise, to carry that forward, to never forget. I couldn't speak, could only nod. Isla took the plaque. Together she and I mounted it on a post at the ranch entrance, permanent, visible, a declaration to the world. As the sun set that evening, I stood alone at the graves one final time. I felt their presence, not as ghosts, but as memory, as love, as the foundation upon which everything else was built. "I'm keeping my promise," I whispered, "living, building, choosing hope over hate, mercy over vengeance." The wind rustled through the grass, gentle, peaceful. And for the first time in 5 years I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the acceptance of it. The understanding that scars are proof of survival, that grief and joy can coexist, that endings and beginnings are often the same moment seen from different angles. I walked back to the house. Our house, built by many hands, sheltering many lives. Inside, the community gathered for dinner. A tradition we'd started. One night a week, everyone together, sharing food and stories and laughter. Children ran between tables. Adults talked and joked. The smell of cooking filled the air. Isla was helping Greta with a massive pot of stew. Vera and Hans were debating the best way to fix a wagon axle. Mira was braiding Ruth Washington's hair. Luna was teaching young Carl how to whistle. Grimshaw sat alone, lost in thought. I joined him. "You all right?" He nodded slowly. "Just thinking about how different this is from a year ago, how impossible it would have seemed, but it's real." "Yeah, it's real." He looked at me. "You did this, Jacob. You brought us all together." I shook my head. "We did this. All of us. Every person here chose to be part of something bigger than themselves." I looked around the room, at all these different faces, different stories, different pains and hopes. That's the miracle. Not one person's strength, but many people's choice. The door opened. Mayor Hawthorne stepped in. He looked uncomfortable, out of place. The room fell silent. He cleared his throat. "Warren, I came to say something I should have said a long time ago." He removed his hat, held it in both hands. "I was wrong. About you. About all of you. I let fear and prejudice blind me to what was right." He looked around the room. "What you've built here, this community, it's remarkable. It's what this territory needs, what this country needs." He turned back to me. "I'm sorry. For my words, for my actions, for my silence when I should have spoken." The room remained silent, waiting. I walked over to him, extended my hand. "Thank you for saying that. It took courage." He shook my hand, relief evident on his face. "Is there room in your community for one more family?" "My daughter. She's 17, smart, capable. She wants to be a teacher." I thought maybe. I smiled. "There's always room for anyone willing to build instead of destroy." Hawthorne's eyes glistened. "Thank you." 1 year after the battle, I stood at Anna and David's graves with the community we'd built gathered behind me. 14 families, more than 60 people, each one carrying their own scars, each one choosing hope over despair. I knelt, placed prairie roses on both graves. I'm keeping my promise, living, building, choosing mercy. The wind carried voices behind me, children laughing, adults talking, the sounds of life continuing. Isla's hand found my shoulder. They would be proud. I looked back at the community, at the houses we'd built, at the people who had chosen to stand together. Yeah, they would. And as the sun set over the land we'd reclaimed from ashes, I realized something David had understood at 5 years old. Love doesn't end with death. It transforms, becomes something larger, something that holds broken people together and helps them build new hope from old grief. That was his last gift to me, and I would honor it every day for the rest of my life. The end.